Welcome to Adapted, the podcast where we explore adaptations of various forms. I'm today's host, Tom, and with me is...
Pat.
Today, I knew I said I was going to talk about eyewitness accounts of Shakespeare's plays, but I'm going to push that off another week.
But I lie.
Yeah, I lie always, yes. And I want to start today. I thought this was fun.
For eyewitness counts, it would have been good. You could have had Julius Caesar. You should have done the eyewitess.
Yes,
Get it?
Get it? No,
Get it?
Audience, let us know on X if you got it. But anyway, so I'm going to talk today a little bit about, I was reading about the rivalry between Ben Jonson and Shakespeare. And there's actually something of an interesting history here. And some interesting documents that survive and all of that. And so the first real comment we have of Jonson about Shakespeare is very famously in 1623 in the Folio. And he wrote a poem to Shakespeare praising Shakespeare to be published with that first folio. And it was very complimentary, but that's where he had little Latin and less Greek is the famous line there. But he goes on and on about how great Shakespeare is and all of that stuff, and that's very nice. However, years later, they found other things that Jonson had said about Shakespeare, and that kind of trickled out, and maybe some of the reasons why. And I should say who Ben Jonson was. Ben Jonson was a very famous playwright. He's probably second to Shakespeare. His dates are 1571 to 1637, so he outlived Shakespeare by about 21 years.
What did he write? What does he write?
His most famous play was Bartholomew Fair, which is a real big... Volpone the Fox is another one. Those are his two biggest. He also has A Staple of News, which is really interesting if you're interested in the kind of scene in London at the time. He was very into city comedies. He liked to write about the city of London and what it was like. So he's very different from Shakespeare in a lot of ways. He's much more interested in contemporary references. But so that's Jonson. And Jonson kind of saw himself in competition with the older Shakespeare. He was a little bit anxious. He was the son of a bricklayer, very, very poor. They were immigrants, and he sort of had to claw his way to the top a little bit. And there's some interesting accounts of Jonson talking about Shakespeare that came out much later, and then a justification as to why. So apparently in the Christmas season of 1618 into 1619, Shakespeare died in 1616, Jonson visited the home of Scottish lawyer William Drummond. Jonson had just completed a publicity trick, and what that was a 400-mile walk from London to Edinburgh. And apparently people were really into the 285-pound Jonson walking 400 miles. And he even had to bring a scribe along to write down people he met as a confirmation that he actually did this trick. And so on that walk, he met his friend, towards the end of the walk, he met his friend Drummond, who lived up in Scotland. And apparently Drummond wrote down everything the man had to say in notebooks. Now, everything Jonson had to say. Now, these notebooks were kind of shelved for a little while until 1711, when Jonson's by that point, older son, collected these notebooks and published them in 1711. And what he basically said was, he was kind of ranting about Shakespeare. And he would talk about how Shakespeare wanted art and how he was really a very crude writer. So that was his thing. Meanwhile, also early in the 18th century, we had Jacob Tonson, who was attempting to publish an 8-volume octavo edition, complete with new information about Shakespeare. And Jonson wanted to find out something about Shakespeare's history. Apparently nobody had taken an interest in Shakespeare's life. And so he hired playwright Nicholas Rowe to find these things out and gather new information. Rowe found Jonson's notebooks. And Jonson's notebooks had actually survived. They were published in the year 1640 after Jonson's death in an edition known as The Discoveries. And In the discoveries, what Rowe then republished in this introduction to Shakespeare was that Johnson had gotten from Shakespeare's players, the actors that worked for him, and he wrote that I remember the players have often mentioned it as an honor to Shakespeare that in his writing, whatsoever he penned, he never blotted out line. My answer, Johnson's answer, hath been, would he had blotted out 1,000, which they thought a malviolent speech. So apparently Shakespeare never edited on page. He only edited in his head. Whenever he wrote anything down, he wrote it fully, kind of like Mozart writing music. And Johnson's big turnaround was he had blotted out 1,000. That was his big put down of Shakespeare.
Zing.
Zing, yeah. But, and this relates to Julius Caesar, Johnson then in these notebooks cites a line from Julius Caesar that he thought was ridiculous. And Johnson wrote, many times Shakespeare, fell into those things, could not escape laughter, as when he said in the person of Caesar, one speaking to him, Caesar, thou dost me wrong. He, Caesar, replied, Caesar did never wrong, but with just cause and such like, which was ridiculous. However,
does he say why he just because it
well, we
doesn't...
don't actually have that quote. You see, Julius Caesar was only published in the folio. We have no quarto of it. And that quote isn't in Julius Caesar. So it seems like Johnson was quoting a line he didn't like, which at some point was edited out of Julius Caesar before it was published. And so there's another little insight, just like with that quarto Hamlet, into Shakespeare, or at least his editor's revision process.
That, by the way, needs to be the name of a barbershop quartet. The Bad Quarto.
The bad,
The Bad Quartets. Be good.
That would be good. Yeah. And what ends up happening is that, like later in 1776, Tonson's edition of Shakespeare ended up being used as the ordering. So the order of plays, which plays first, which plays last. Another scholar, Edmund Malone, came along in 1776 and used Tonson's edition to justify the order we think of Shakespeare's plays being in. But there's another reason probably why Johnson was attacking Shakespeare. So in 1603, Johnson put on a play called Cincinus His Fall. And it was a huge, huge flop. And it had a lot of classical themes in the way Julius Caesar does. And Julius Caesar apparently was a big success. And there is a bunch of independent accounts of people seeing the play and complaining about it. We have a writer, William Fenner, who kept a poem that he published in 1616 about how everybody was hissing to stop the play as it was going on. There was other accounts from somebody named Eve B. at the Inns of Court, who was probably a law student named Everett Buckworth, who also had a poem that was published about how damn bad the play was. We have another account from someone, a friend actually of Thomas Hobbes, who was there in the theater as a child and as an older person, wrote about how badly the play was mocked, and which he remembered clearly from being a child as an older person. What's interesting about that was that play was put on by the King's Men in the Globe, starring Shakespeare himself, as well as Richard Burbage. So maybe some of the antagonism Johnson felt towards Shakespeare had to do with he gave Shakespeare his play and it got booed off stage.
It's pretty
good. So that's my thesis, or my hypothesis, I should say.
I gotta read some Ben Jonson. I've never read Ben Jonson. Not a single one.
Yeah, Bartholomew Fair is interesting.
Does it age well? Is it worth watching? Never even seen a revival. I don't think it's not like anything you've seen a revival
Volpone is probably the one that lifts out of his contemporary area. It's more of like a old man trying to marry young woman type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Bartholomew Fair is really interesting because it's basically the fair, like a place where you sell things in London. And he's mocking Puritans. The whole thing is to mock Puritans. So there's a famous character, Zeal of the Land Busy is his name. And he he's trying to put down the fair. And there's a lot of funny jokes where at one point Zeal's like, the fair's terrible. We have to protest it." And then he's like, "Oh, they're eating fresh pork there. That's disgusting." And then he goes, "Well, I'm going to go to the fair and eat the pork to prove to everyone I'm not a Jew, and that'll be very good." And then he goes, there's a cop there, and they make fun of the cop and things like that. It's that type of thing. It's sort of making fun of different social positions. He really hated Puritans, made fun of them. Staple of News is interesting, and I think actually probably more timely. It's about people who are addicted to news and stand around a newsstand buying up news as soon as it comes out.
Yeah, that sounds like that could age pretty well.
Yeah, there's the terms for it is quidnunc, which means what next in Latin. And that was a term for
Man,
people.
someone needs to make a social net, like a social media thing called that.
Quidnunc, yeah, um, yeah. So that was
That would just be really good.
yeah, but that was a term in this period when news books, that's what they called them, were being printed because apparently people were just like, So what did the Dutch do in the Habsburg battles? Huh? Did you hear any news? They would just like stand around and wanna listen. Like, oh, we have that today. That did not go away.
That just got worse.
It just got a lot worse. Yeah. So I think Staple of News might not be the best play in the world, but it is worth it for that little tidbit. But anyway, let's jump into this play, Julius Caesar. Um, I really like this play a lot, and I think the thing I'll start with anyway is the what I think the play is about, which is basically the people are idiots. that's that's what I think.
Yeah.
I think the play is basically about the people are idiots and idyllic thinkers don't really work in a world in which you have to appease plebeians
Um,
to a degree.
to a
I
degree,
To a
I think
degree.
there's also an argument to be made that Brutus is a bit self-deceiving to
Hmm.
some extent.
Yeah, I think that's
Um,
true also. Hmm.
and I think there's a number of things. I think it is certainly a major theme, but I think there's also this idea that, generally speaking, I think Brutus probably does mean for the best. But I think there's ample evidence that other people do. Cassius kind of doesn't. There's enough evidence that he's just trying to kind of line his pockets and doesn't like Caesar because Caesar won't let him get his way, and sort of manipulates Brutus into doing what he wants. So there is a suggestion here of that too, that even the conspirators themselves and Brutus is sort of more there's almost the way I kind of look at Brutus is that he wants to live up to, it's like Theoden trying to earn his place in the halls of his fathers. It's like my fathers did a great deed. I don't get to do one. This is my opportunity to do a great deed. I'm going to do it. Um and yes, they all justify it saying they're doing it for the Republic. I think you could argue that not nobody in this play really cares about the Republic.
I think there's
Um,
something there, yeah, because the clue or the evidence for me that Brutus is a little more self-aggrandizing than he pretends to be, than he probably even knows, is that he doesn't want Cicero involved.
yeah.
And he says, like, well, Cicero needs to be the head of anything he starts. He needs to come up with anything he starts, which means that you, Brutus, will no longer be the most important person in the conspiracy. And you'll have to play second fiddle. And that's
Yeah.
that's kind of damning, right? Because if he got Cicero on his side, things might be a lot better for him.
Yes, I think there is a very strong case you could make that if Cicero had joined them, that there's a fascinating thing. This is just a stray observation because yes, I agree. The thing is, Brutus often has the right sort of reasoning for things, but then he doesn't see how things are going to play out. Like he doesn't involve Cicero. He doesn't kill Mark Antony. He marches on Philippi instead of staying where he's not supposed to be. He constantly just sort of he just makes bad choices and in some ways on all of these things. Whereas Cassius almost always sees what they should do, but in the except for when he kills himself because he thinks that he's going to get captured and he isn't. There's almost this sense that Cassius never can make the right decision because he's always gets overruled by Brutus, except in the one time where he does make a decision of his own and it's the wrong decision. Like there's sort of these ironies of like all of these guys are just constantly making stupid decisions all over the place. So even the smart people aren't really doing very well here. Um,
Yeah, they
and
never let somebody else you disagree with speak second.
yeah,
Yeah,
which is yeah, I mean it's very true.
yeah, he
Um,
lets Mark Antony speak second, who he's going
and
to disagree with.
leaves for
Yes,
his own. There's
leaves.
like
Or he lets him speak. He lets him speak second, so he gets the last word, and he leaves not to survey what the
and
consequence of it is.
insists that everybody else stay. I mean, I get it. I think, it was supposed to be, if you logically are speaking, it's his way of being like, I trust you, Mark Antony. I'm putting my faith in you. I, you know, I'm not a paranoid conspirator. I did a righteous deed and I trust the people around me. Like I think, that's what you're supposed to read it
But
as.
it's
But in
politically stupid.
yeah, there's numerous reasons why it's stupid, and that's the whole thing. I mean, even the killing of Caesar is stupid.
Hmm.
What did they think was going to happen?
Hmm.
There was no way this was ever going to end in their favor. Um, but they do it anyway. So I think there's the plebs are stupid, but all of the other people are stupid too, with the
Yeah,
exception of maybe Mark Antony
Mark Antony's
and
pretty
and
bright.
Octavius.
Octavius, yeah, whose intelligence we probably see a little later, or in Antony and Cleopatra. But
Yeah,
yeah,
you see Nancy Cleopatra. Yeah,
Mark Antony's really the winner. He is and
yeah,
Caesar's pretty smart too, but Caesar's
yes.
just caught. I mean, Caesar has you might think egotistical, but he also has a sort of grand sense of his own importance, and he's right.
Yeah.
Caesar absolutely is right. What happens with Mark Antony is, excuse me, with Brutus, is he has that speech about how he doesn't want our course to seem so bloody. That what we should do is we don't want to kill Caesar's body. We just want to kill his spirit. And we'll just kill his spirit. We won't kill his body. And obviously it's like, well, that's dumb. you
That's
you can't
stupid.
do it. And the irony though is this is something Paul Cantor, the critic, who he likes to write about Shakespeare in Rome. That's his specialty, is Shakespeare in Rome. He goes, the irony is in killing Shakespeare's body, you release his spirit. He becomes a Caesar in the way we understand the word Caesar or Czar or what have you, or Kaiser, because you killed his body, right? That's what unleashes his spirit. And so there's this just incredible naivete on the part of Brutus. And I think you're right also. I think there is an inability to understand his own motives, which are probably more selfish than Brutus would like to admit.
Yeah, I don't think but this is, I think, and this is he's he's after just Cassius is after money, Brutus is after, it's not honor, it's not glory, but he's after, I don't know if we have a word for it. I'm trying to think what the word might be. He wants Timos, Timor, is it Timor, whatever it is? Kleos, the sort of Greek, I can't remember. It's Kleos and I think it's Timor. Um, he wants fame, sort of. He wants this sort of eternal glory of sort of salvific glory of being like his ancestors who ejected the Tarquins. He wants to be remembered the same way they are. He wants his name to live on forever after death. So, and he's like, I'm going out of my way to establish this of our motives of why we did it. So he's not after money, but he's after something of his own right. He's not after, it's sort of the like, he's not trying to lay up treasure in heaven on earth. He's trying to lay up treasure in sort of history. He wants that name to be forever remembered. So he's no less greedy than Cassius going after money. He's just greedy for something else. Um, and I don't think as I say, I think the idea here is nobody really has the best interest of the Republic because as you said, the plebs are stupid,
Yeah.
and so they're all dumb. I mean, that's why, like, as funny as that scene is with the
Mm,
poet getting killed,
mm.
it's also just meant to show that like these people are morons.
Yeah.
Like, they're idiots.
Yeah, and this is just after they, were convinced by what was probably a somewhat inferior argument in terms of logic. Antony's argument over
Oh yeah,
Brutus.
it is.
Yeah,
Antony's argument isn't logical. Antony's argument is
it's emotional.
emotion. Yeah,
It's pathos over logos.
yeah.
Yeah. And it's but yeah, that's I think to your point, yeah, the plebes aren't that bright. And if we look at Coriolanus, right, which is historically happening earlier,
I
you
love
have
that play, by the way. I
yeah,
really like that play. I read that one recently. It's actually a really good Shakespeare play. I get why it's never performed. It's very Greek. It reminds me of Ajax, of the play by Sophocles. It's got a lot going on that reminds me of Ajax. And if you read Ajax,
I have not.
the basic thing that happens in Ajax is like Ajax is insulted for a number of reasons, and he basically is like, I have to kill myself for honor. Like I don't have a choice. I have to do it for honor. There's nothing I can do. And even when his like family and children come to him and are like, if you kill yourself, we're all going to be sold into slavery and be tortured to death. Like, and we're all going to just have horrible lives, and some of us will be executed, some will be sold into slavery and will be raped and everything. Like, can you just sacrifice your honor for all of us? And he basically is like, no. Like I can never bend on my knee. And that's sort of Coriolanus's thing. It has this very Greek sort of Sophoclean feel to it of just this character who's like, no, I cannot do anything other than what and who I am. And therefore he falls.
Yeah.
I am, and he thinks that it's not so much that he does it and thinks that there and then falls. It's that he thinks that it doesn't matter that he can't bend. He thinks the fact that he can't show any humility or anything else is actually a sign of his genuineness,
Mhm.
and that people will respect that. And in reality, everyone's like, no, you're just a douche who won't play the game.
Yeah, yeah, and to a degree, I get where Coriolanus is coming from because he's there is something about like about what Brutus and Anthony is doing that if you're a person who's like, I'm not going to
Yeah.
like cry my eyes out in front of a bunch of people to get them to agree with me, it's sort of an anti-political thing, right? It's
Yeah.
just like I'm not going to act like a politician and make all these and pretend I'm or demonstrate my love of the nation in order to get votes. That's
But the
beneath
truth is he
me.
does. But I guess that's the thing is he does
Coriolanus
actually.
does.
Coriolanus does have to do that. He has to do it to some extent.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
can't
exactly.
do it.
Oh,
He
yeah.
can't do it at all. That's his, not
That's his
this is
problem.
yeah, and this is his, this is the quote unquote tragic flaw, which I don't think that actually exists, but I think it's his mistake. He thinks that he doesn't need to do that. He thinks that his
But he
genuine
does. He does.
does, and
Yeah.
that's where his
Because
mistake comes in.
he's not dealing with plebes in that sense. He's dealing with citizens.
Yeah,
The people he's talking to aren't plebe one, plebe two. There's
that's
citizen
true.
one,
They're
citizen two.
citizens, yeah.
Yeah. So it's they're closer to him in status. And he's also kind of, I guess, a bit of a political idiot in that way.
Yeah.
When we get to this play, the political idiocy is something different, which is no, we are going to convince the people of our rightness. There's suddenly this different relationship where the people you're trying to convince are kind of more of a demos. There's more of a demos going on in
Yeah.
this play than in Coriolanus, and that's that kind of famous act. I think it's what three two, right? I think is the act three, scene two is
Yeah, is the long,
getting the
yeah.
number right is
I
irrelevant.
think it's
People
three
can look
two.
this up.
Pretty sure it's 3-2.
Yeah, but this is the scene of the most famous scene of the play of the competing speeches, and so you have Brutus going first, and then Antony, and Brutus makes a logical argument. He also does like some rhetorically interesting things. It's not a bad speech. It's a really good argument. It's a really well-read speech. I think he has, like I was looking at it, he has these kind of tricolons, like as as I loved Caesar, I worshipped him. As I blah blah blah, I did
Yeah,
something else.
I honored him, but as he was ambitious, I
I
slew
slew
him.
him.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. And he has those, they're tricolons, like three things. I was looking at it, he actually has three tricolons in a tricolon. So it's a tricolon tricolon kind of thing. It's actually a fairly complex thing he's doing. Though oddly enough, it's in prose. It's not in poetry, his speech. So it's pretty rhetorically rich and it's a good argument. But then Anthony just blows him out of the water. And his speech is it's in poetry, which I actually think is supposed to be more natural in Shakespeare. I think that's why like elevated characters speak in poetry is because they're somehow more in touch with their emotion. And Anthony has an entirely Antony's speech is entirely pathos. Look how great Caesar was, followed by here's a bunch of money.
Yeah.
That's how he wins the crowd. Caesar was great.
He
I
has a
love
few
you.
sort of logical points. His only real logical argument is you can't say that Caesar was ambitious because he was presented with the crown 3 times and he denied it.
Yeah,
That's his only real,
that's true.
truly logical claim.
Yeah, but outside of that, it's
Yeah,
not really.
there's not a lot there.
It's just you're.
I should throw this out there with this speech. I hadn't read this play in a very long time. I saw a production of it actually at BAM at Brooklyn Academy of Music. They actually had a really good one with did with like African tribes. Um, it was actually pretty good. And the soothsayer they did is like a witch doctor, and the soothsayer was like like always on the stage, literally like sleeping in the corner and would wake up periodically. It was actually pretty effective. Actually, it was pretty cool. But that was the only production I think I've seen of it. But the thing is that for a while, I hated this play. I read this in my sophomore year in high school, and it was the worst teacher that I ever had. And it was the worst teacher I ever had because he was the only teacher I think I've ever had who not only did I not learn a lot, he really made me hate the the subjects. Like I was very bitter towards English by the time I finished that year. And every book that we did in that class, I just won't read anymore. Like I won't read Lord of the Flies. I won't read it. I won't read, and I don't even know if it's that good actually. If we do our Nobel Prize ones, maybe we'll find something else. But
Force you to revisit your 10th grade class.
I'm sure we'll find something else by William Golding. But it was like I mean, some of the stuff we read was really bad. We were the Catcher in the Rye, and then which is pretty mediocre. And but it was just like this play, and we spent a long time on this play because I think it was like 2 months of rhetoric. So we did like we had to write our own speeches and we had to go through every single one of these and like find every rhetorical device and then we like go through all these different speeches to like analyze the rhetorical devices and do our own speech. And so I spent a lot of time on this scene in high school and I'm very bitter towards it. I really enjoyed it on on my second read through. It's actually a pretty good play. Brutus is a much more interesting character than I had given him credit for as a sophomore in high school. But it's funny reading it and just reading it now. And even as you're just being like, it has these stroke devices. I'm like, yeah, I remember this. Like, and it makes me a little angry to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't have. I read it, I think, in middle school, maybe. I don't remember with what teacher it was or how positive or negative the experience was. But regardless, it's a more kind of posh speech, I guess. But it's
Yeah,
interesting
I
that.
mean, it's a totally logical argument, and it's very, as you said, like there's a lot of rhetorical devices he uses. There's a lot of like rhetorical questions being used. There's sort of repetition. There's building. There's all these different devices that if you went into um, Aristotle's rhetoric and you went through it, you'd find all
Mhm.
of them here.
Yeah,
This is a
yeah. If you read Quintilius, this would be a good model.
yeah,
It's learned, and I think
yes,
that's what Anthony gets that he doesn't is if you don't show tears, no one cares about your Latin or Greek. Your Latin or Greek is, actually speaking of Ben Jonson,
yeah,
right? Yeah, nobody cares about your Latin and Greek. What they care about is can the guy make you cry, right? And bribe you. Because in the
yeah.
end, that's really probably what does it. Is the what is it, 75 drachmas or whatever it
75
is,
drachmas, and they get his
and
parts.
they get the commons. Yes,
Yeah,
they
they
get
get
to
his
walk in his
parts.
commons. Yeah, um, and it's just
Do you think
it
they ever
is.
got their money? Like in all seriousness, did
I
they ever?
don't know. I'd like to look that up to find
I'd
out.
always be wonder. I wonder if any of them ever got their money.
Get there, yeah. How many people actually qualified for it?
Even if you
It sounds
qualified
like a
for it, how
FEMA
many of them
thing,
in
doesn't it?
the coming Civil War? How many of them ever got it?
Yeah, I
I
don't
would
know.
love to know.
Yeah, there's something that's interesting that's left out. That apparently Shakespeare's source did stress the Brutus is the son, the biological son of Caesar. And
Oh, I've
Shakespeare,
heard that. Yeah, it's not
yeah,
great.
that's that. Well, it's in Shakespeare's source. I don't know if it's true or not. And apparently Shakespeare just left that out for whatever reason.
I think it's just too. even for Shakespeare, that's too. That's just.
It's too Freudian.
Yeah, I think even for his sake, it's like, oh, come on.
Yeah,
Like, nah, that's just, we
yeah.
got enough.
Because
We
in
got,
the original source too, also Brutus stabs Caesar in the genitals, so it's just very much on the very much on the head and
haha.
uh,
Um, Somebody had something recently and they were like, they go, the if you actually apparently because they were, which is probably true, if Caesar was killed, he probably wouldn't have said et tu Brute. He would have said something in Greek,
mhm.
probably more likely. And apparently, like someone said that what if you can actually translate what his thing to say is closer. What he basically says was like, "And you, my son," or something
Mhm.
like that. But what it also could mean is essentially at like "come at me, boy."
Mhm.
It could be so. It's
Yeah.
like, was he trying to say like even you, my son? Because apparently that is the word he used was my son. But it also could be like, "come at me," like
Yeah.
you, come on, boy.
Yeah.
You want a piece of
Yeah.
me, like.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's you want a piece of me?
yeah, it's basically like you want a piece of me,
You want a
kid.
piece
Like,
of me?
come
Hmm.
on, stab me too, kid. Like, and so it's like, what? So which was it? Was he try? Was it this sad moment of sort of betrayal, or was it a like, come
Joe
on, kid?
Pesci.
Yeah, like yeah, Joe Pesci, being like this sort of like, and I'm like, I wonder which it was.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So, do you want to transition to the movie?
Yeah, let's go to the movie.
Let's go to the movie. I like this movie a lot. I don't think this is the most brilliant movie we're going to watch this season, um, but I think it's worth watching for a few of the performances. Mark Antony, Brando as Mark Antony, is really good.
It's really smart. It's like
Yeah.
he just looks so even, I mean, I know who Brando is, but you don't need to even know who Brando is. You just see him walking in the background, you go, yeah, that's Mark Antony. Like, everybody knows like that dude is different from the rest of them. Like he's just tanned and ripped and cool and it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's the dude who's hanging out with chicks at night and getting drunk.
Yeah.
Like that's Mark Antony.
That he's the problem. He's going to be the problem for
Yeah.
you if you want to oppose him. It's going to be that guy.
Yeah, and he
Um,
just looks awesome.
yeah.
He just looks so baller when when he walks in there. You're just like, man, that's a cool guy. Like he just has.
Yeah.
It's not James Dean, but it
Mm.
has this just like, yeah, that guy's cool.
Yeah, James Dean has kind of a wounded cool, like he's sort of crunched in on
Yeah,
himself, and so therefore he becomes a source of attraction. With Brando, it's just like I am in charge, and
yeah.
that's what it feels like. And it's interesting because the Caesar in it, Lewis Calhern, who I don't know at all, I don't know his other
I don't
work.
think I knew any of the other actors.
Oh well, I know Gilgood and James Mason.
Who are they? Which ones are they?
Gilgood was Cassius, excuse me.
What else is he in?
John Gilgood?
Yeah.
He was Henry the Fourth in Chimes at Midnight.
Oh
He's in
yeah.
Hamlet. He won the
Oh, he was
Oscar
really
back
good.
in the
He was really
80s.
good in that. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
He is really good in that.
Yeah,
Sorry.
he was like the big
Oh, that's right. Oh, yeah, he's the player king. Not the player king.
he's
He's
yeah.
Fortinbras's. He's
Hmm.
Norway, right?
No. He is when the player king's talking about the fall of Priam, he's playing
Oh,
Priam in that
he's
flash.
Priam. Okay, with
Mm.
Judi Dench.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I remember now.
Yeah, but
Okay.
he won an
Oh, I
Oscar
would
in
never. I would
the
never. Okay, now I know who John Gielgud is. Yeah, I
yeah.
forgot about him.
Yeah, he had hair in this, or at least a wig that
Oh yeah, he's really
resembled.
good in Henry the in Jobs at Midnight. I love
Yeah.
him in that.
Yeah, he's wonderful in that.
Oh, I would not have recognized him.
Yeah, he's a hairy man here, but yeah, and then James Mason, who's most famous for Lolita. He's the guy from Lolita,
Oh, the one with
the
uh
Nabokov, and
yeah. Well, I know Lolita.
uh, uh,
The Pink Panther one. The what's his name?
Peter Sellers.
Yeah, thank you.
God, that hurt. Yeah, yeah, with Peter Sellers. Yeah, so
Peter Sellers, yeah, yeah. I've only seen that once. I actually don't really like that movie very much.
yeah, I don't know.
Um, I think we were talking like
Big man.
offline about how I'm like Kubrick's a bit overrated.
Mhm.
Because that's Kubrick, right?
Mhm.
Isn't that Kubrick? Yeah, I don't really like that movie.
It's the
Um,
movie doesn't make any sense because
no.
it looks like England, but it's a movie about like the American Midwest. It's a
Yeah,
travel.
the whole point of Lolita is it's an American like that's an American story.
Yeah.
The novel Lolita
Mhm.
is an American novel, but it's also just dumb because it was like, oh, I mean, we all know it's Peter Sellers playing all these roles, but that was like it was like this weird meta reference where it was like, oh, that was intentional. Like he's supposed to be Quilty, like going out actually being these. Anyway, it felt like in Oceans, like one of the Oceans movie where they have like who is the female in Oceans
Julia
11?
Roberts.
Julia Roberts, and they have Julia Roberts pretend to be Julia Roberts. Like it's this weird like meta moment where I was like, oh, we all knew it was Peter Sellers playing multiple roles, but that was part of the plot, and it was just like that was just a bad movie.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah,
I would know. I would again. I've only seen it once, and so I wouldn't recognize. I did not recognize him as
yeah.
that.
And I think he's well cast in it. I
He's
think
good.
he's
Brutus
good
is
in it,
good. Brutus is very good.
and I
So
think
is
he.
Cassius, actually.
Yeah, they're both good. I think my point with the Julius Caesar is that he's a little different than I imagined him in the play. I think he doesn't quite. He seems at the end of his command, right? I mentioned Julius Caesar as somebody who has a sort of gravitas that draws people to him. This one seemed a little uncertain. He seemed a little more. He seemed rougher, I suppose, a little older and a little less solid in what he wanted to do. And
It was a
Anthony,
little harder to see him. I mean, again, maybe that was the point. It's a little less harder seeing him being a successful king.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, I think it's a problem though, because I think it does. I think there is something tragic about Caesar's light going out, and I understand that there's this idea, presumptively, of preserving the republic that actually nobody believes in, but there's still like Caesar is a grand figure in that play. Like when
yeah,
he says like
you're
I
supposed to
am
regret the passing of great things.
exact, and I
In the
think
you know,
that's
it's
what.
the same. We regret the passing of the cherry orchard. You know, you regret the passing of Caesar. Like you're supposed to regret that this force is gone.
Mhm. Yeah, and I didn't get that sense from this actor. He seemed not someone who commanded that kind of attention.
Yeah, I mean they don't give him a lot of room to move. You know,
Hmm.
the only scene, the only his only really extended scene is his scene with his wife, with Calpurnia,
Hmm.
in which he is kind of waffling and unsure of himself, and
Hmm.
it's not a great, you know, it is a scene that makes him look a little weak if you don't do it right. And there's isn't really, they don't really give him much else, right? I don't
Hmm.
think they do.
No, I think they might even cut his monologue about how he's the greatest thing above all. He has a
Yeah, well,
monologue
he
in
has
three
his speech. He
one.
has a speech about where he's bitter. I don't know. He's bitter about how when he turned the crown down, that the people didn't say he should take it, that they cheered that he didn't take it. And then, like I love that scene where he's bitter because he turned it down and he wanted the Richard III thing, where he would turn the crown down and everyone would say like, "No, you have to take it." And he turns it down and they're all like, "Yay, he turned it down!" And he's like, "That was not how we wanted this to go."
Yeah, that was pretty good.
It's a great sequence.
Yeah. But I do think like Brutus, especially against James Mason against Brando, works really well. Having their speeches go back to back, having those two people, because James Mason, he's so posh, he's
Yeah,
so patrician, and Brando is like you imagine that guy getting off of a motorcycle and walking
yeah,
walking
yeah.
onto the set, like he looks like one of those people, and you
He's
get
so.
it.
I mean, again, he's tanned. No one else is tanned. Like he's just. He looks like he looks like he just got off a beach. Like he'd be in GQ. Like he just has this just real suaveness.
Yeah, I also think it's just he doesn't sound like them. He doesn't
Yeah.
have this proper
No, he
British
doesn't. Yeah.
received, and so it's just like you can imagine, and they don't either. The
But he doesn't
plebeians
sound
don't
but
either.
he does the Shakespeare well. He
Hmm.
you never get the Keanu Reeves like awkwardness or even
Yeah,
the
Robert
Jack
Downey
Lemmon.
Jr. Yeah, yeah, or
Yeah,
Jack
or
Lemmon.
the Jack yeah, Robert Downey Jr. is probably the worst is
Yeah,
one of the worst. But even Jack Lemmon's is pretty
awkward.
garbled.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty awkward. But you never get that. He's closer to like the Billy Crystal, where you're just like, wow, they're just fluent. Like there's no stumbling. There's no sense that they're not very at home with the language. Uh, and yeah, but he doesn't sound that way. He's definitely giving it. I had my kids are watching it, and they're 5 and 6. They were watching part of it with me, and you know followed it like reasonably well. And especially as the Brando stuff they were getting pretty clearly. And I don't know if it's because Brando doesn't rely on as much logic. They got it. It was pretty neat to see it.
To see them. Wow. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I remember that. I think I saw this when I was in high school for the first time.
You
And
know when I
that's
saw it for the first time?
when.
I saw it in high school for the first time too. They
Oh.
made us watch it in that stupid English class.
Okay, so I didn't I saw it. It was like a Brando period when I was young, where I was like, I'm going to watch all of his Oscar nominated films in a row, and that was the six of them I think he's been nominated for, and that's his third I think. So that's when I first
What else
watched
was
it.
he nominated for? Streetcar? This one?
Streetcar was
Godfather?
his first. His second was Viva Zapata, which is another movie from the director of Streetcar, where he plays Zapata.
Elia Kazan?
Elia Kazan
Yeah.
directed that too. Then this was the third. The fourth was On the Waterfront. Fifth was
Still haven't seen that. I really gotta
That's
see it on the
really
waterfront.
good.
Well,
Yeah.
we had it slated maybe for our Best Picture winners, but we didn't do it.
Yeah, because it was the book was too
Because it
long.
turns out I thought it was a book, and you were like, it's like 1,400 pages of court
No,
proceedings.
no, no, no.
Wasn't
It
that
wasn't.
one?
No, it was. You thought it was an article, and it was a book. It was a bunch of articles that had been turned into a book. It
Yeah.
wasn't one article. It was a collection of them.
But
Like
wasn't it really long?
it was like 300 or 400 pages, and I was.
Oh, yeah, I
I
was
think
too
it was
tired
like
for
a
that.
few days before we were going to record. I'm like, I just told you, like, this isn't one article, right? You're like, oh, we're not doing it.
I mean, there was a lot of
we
a
we read
lot
a
of reading.
lot. Yeah, no, we read a lot, and I was happy that you you cut that.
But
Um,
anyway, I still haven't seen it on the waterfront.
yeah,
Okay, so
that was then Godfather, then um,
yeah, like
Last
Last Tango.
Tango
Yeah,
in
Last Tango. I
Paris,
remember was in there.
and then Dry White Season. I think was his only Best Supporting
I don't think I've ever even
nomination
heard of that one.
from 1990.
I've never even heard
It's
of that one.
not a very good movie with Donald Sutherland, and it's basically somebody in apartheid South Africa gets accused of the wrong thing. It's very To Kill a Mockingbirdie.
It
Brando
kind of
plays
sounds
the
like cry. It's like
lawyer.
Cry for the Beloved Country kind of thing.
Oh, maybe I haven't seen that or read that. Um, I don't know that at all, actually.
Yeah, Cry. I mean, Cry for the Beloved Country. I guess isn't. I don't think he's wrongly accused. He did actually commit the murder, but um, it's like a court. It's a South African courtroom drama kind of thing. Similar apart. It's actually pre-apartheid. It's really interesting because it was written pre-apartheid. So clearly it takes place pre-apartheid. And there's all periodically, there's like they're trying to like how do we handle the situation? And there's all these different voices, and there's like one voice that like shows up period. It's literally voices. Like it's kind of a modern novel at certain points where there's just like stream of consciousness, but it's stream of consciousness of society, sort of like, and so all these, and like one voice in there that kind of gets inserted periodically is basically apartheid, but it's not really given much credit because you could tell. I think the author was like, "That'll never happen." I think there was sort of this idea of like, "This is the crazy voice," but like all the other ideas are in there. But Cry the Little Country is interesting, but it's like courtroom,
Yeah,
South African courtroom drama.
this isn't that good. This doesn't sound anywhere near as interesting. But Brando's good in it because he basically plays this lawyer who knows he's going to lose, and you could kind of see him. That's the choice he makes, and he's like, "I'm gonna go do this case, even though I know it's completely useless." And he doesn't. It's never said. It's never articulated. It's just clearly the choice he made as an actor, and it's maybe worth watching for that reason. But anyway, regardless, he's just yeah, he just shines out of this movie in a big way. But they all work. I think
They all
Gilgood's
work as actors,
great.
but there's a lot of stuff that doesn't
Mhm.
really work. The sets. I kind of this. I mean, maybe this. I don't even know if you can blame it on the period. The sets feel very much like they're like stage sets. You know what I mean? And they put them on a stage and then film them like from behind because you can do that with the movie. Like doesn't
Mhm.
it? And I don't know if that's what they were intending, but I don't know if it works. Right?
Yeah, it feels like a it's kind of staged, a filmed stage play
Yeah.
almost. It's not very interesting. It's and even the action scenes when they're moving in Philippi and they're assaulted,
Yeah.
they're pretty bad.
They're
They're
pretty
pretty
weak.
static. Um,
It's like it's a bunch of again. It was like just release the arrows. I know what you're doing. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it builds a little bit of tension, but they just show them all walking through the ravine, which remind me of the ravine in the Raiders of the Lost Ark, where like
Mhm.
the Indy has his bazooka pointed at the Ark. I'm gonna
Mhm.
blow up the Ark. And it just reminded me of that. But so they're all just kind of walking through, and then they just release a bunch of arrows, and the horse falls over, and then they all run up to the top of a hill. Like it was just like, yeah, we could have done without it. Like I guess they felt like we have to do it because Olivier showed fight scenes, so we gotta show
We have
fight
to, yeah.
scenes.
And I believe this movie was nominated for Best Picture also, as well. I think it was pretty popular. I think it lost to From Here to Eternity.
It's a good movie. Like I can
It's
see why it's
fine.
popular. And
Mhm.
it's an interest. I mean, of all of Shakespeare's plays, it's the one that always feels the most relevant. Like just sort of especially politically.
Mhm.
Like I don't think it ever kind of doesn't feel like you could find parallels
Mhm.
to modern, especially in, I didn't they did that stupid production in the Shakespeare in the Park, right?
Yeah, they did with
Yeah.
the Trump
With
Caesar,
the Trump
which is
Caesar.
just
Which
confusing
again, which is I'm like, I then you didn't get the play, did you?
unless you're
Like,
yeah.
like this would be like if somebody staged it now, it would be like, and then you had J.D. Vance be Mark Antony. Like then you didn't understand what the
Mhm.
point of the play was.
Yeah, unless it's just, Anthony is supposed to be. Well, I guess you get in this some of the choices Brando makes and the director makes, which aren't the most subtle choices. They're pretty obvious, but I think they work. You see, like when Brando turns away from the crowd, he's not upset. He's just
Yeah.
listening to see what they're doing. And he moves Caesar's bust at one point so he could look at it, and you could see him trying to take on the mantle of Caesar, him imagining himself in the mantle of Caesar. These aren't exactly shocking choices, I would
No.
say, but they're fine and they're effective. And so I guess if you're going to do the whole thing where like Trump gets assassinated and it's JD Vance, I guess maybe the commentary is he would be power hungry for that reason, and the people are admiring the wrong type of person. But they shouldn't admire Brutus either.
No.
Brutus is a political idiot, and his ideals, as you pointed out, his ideals aren't that noble. He's not as noble as he thinks he is. He is a little self-interested, and he doesn't know how to handle stress when it comes upon him. Him and Cassius fall apart once they have to go to battle.
Yeah.
They have swords at each other. They resolve that, but they don't know how to deal with the stress of what would be a common political occurrence at that time. The neither of them are apt leaders, even if there is this thing
They're
about.
both individuals that would have been better off accepting Caesar as their ruler. I mean that's what the play I think is saying. Like both of these guys would have been far, far better off accepting Caesar as the ruler, and it was going to happen anyway. And again, I think given the sort of political situation in Shakespeare's time, I think that was the point. I think it was a like you should accept your your rulers. There's I think there is a sense of that going on here. So that's why it's like it's a really bad if you're trying to make a anti-Trump point, it's a really bad
It's
way
a
to do
really
it.
bad play to do it. Yeah, and then the
The
people.
only other thing I'm always reminded of is it's the uh is it in it's what is the movie where they have the woman it's a comedy one, it's like one of the cop ones, and it's like she's berating the cop and she's like and she says, well, what about that incident last summer? And he goes, when I see, seven guys in togas stabbing a man, I shoot first and ask questions later. And they go, it was a Shakespeare production of Julius Caesar, you moron.
Oh,
You
Naked
killed
Gun.
it's Naked Gun. That's it.
Mm,
You killed seven actors, good ones. And I love it again. I just love the addition of the good ones is the important part of that
mm,
joke
yeah.
because you killed seven actors. You killed seven actors, good ones. That's the problem.
That's a problem. Yeah.
But I love that. It's like
Mm,
I always think of that one here too. But yeah, it's just like, but it always feels like you can take Julius Caesar and translate it fairly well into a political environment. You don't even have to do the stupid heavy-handed thing where you make it Trump. That's just dumb and lazy. But, even if you wanted to make that point, you could do it more effectively without doing that. It doesn't work. But it just feels like you could always take this play and people could read this and find modern whatever their political slant, they'll find how they want to align it.
Yeah, yeah, because you have a problem of leadership. Does somebody have too much authority? Even if the person is somebody we like, do they have too much authority? And then you also have the problem, which I think is why it seems more relevant to me, is you have the problem of a population that has to affirm or reject something. Even if it is a king, it's hard to be a king when everybody hates you. It's
Yeah.
hard to be a dictator when everybody hates you, right? That's you sort of need to curry favor with the populace. And that weird thing where the populace is, they don't always have the best or most informed opinion about things. They're led astray very easily. That seems to be that's something that's really going to be very relevant if it's in a democracy, if it's in an empire, if it's in a dictatorship, it's whatever it is. It's like the worry about the population, the average person, and what they think, and what could happen if a bunch of them get pissed off, and the absurdity of being the person who is skilled enough to get in charge but has to curry favor with a group of average people. That sort of absurdity is at the heart, I
Well,
think,
that's
of
that's the
that's the
Coriolanus
Coriolanus
absurdity. Yeah.
problem also. I think that's what Shakespeare's working out in a lot of these plays. But I think that absurdity is true in politics almost regardless of what the political system
It's
is.
almost everywhere, yeah, and
Yeah.
that's what I was gonna say. This is obviously you're not gonna stage this in North Korea, but if you did, you it works just as well there as it does in Norway,
Mhm.
or whatever country you want to go and say is like the most free democracy ever, on the
Mhm.
planet. Like it will work everywhere.
Mhm.
Everyone will find something
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think that's the enduring power of it.
And Brando's pretty cool.
Brando is great. Watch this movie for Brando. And
Yeah,
then
but I guess we didn't quite get back to it. Just to finish the criticisms, it does feel flat.
oh,
There's no real set.
mhm.
The lighting's weird.
Yeah,
There's
and
just like
the costumes are also a little kind of like stiff and they don't
they look really bad for black and white.
yeah.
Like
Yes.
like this is the like
They don't look like
if you did them in
armor and
color maybe, but for a black and white, they're bad costumes for black and white. The costume
Mhm.
designer didn't work well in the black and white medium.
Yeah. Yeah, there's clearly like there like this shades of brown there, but they aren't highlighted because we don't have color there. I thought the costumes looked really weird. Like some of the hair design too looks kind of like they have this. I get they're trying to do like the Roman thing, but it really looks like somebody glued like little bits of fur on top of everyone's head in order to make it look like a Roman haircut. I was so distracted.
They gave them just merkins on top of their head. Is your
Yeah.
idea here?
I can't tell you how many times I was distracted by Gilgood. It must have been a wig on Gilgood's head. Like I was just like, man, that guy's a really good actor, but that he is fighting a wig that I very few men could survive. And even Brando's haircut. Brando looks cool as hell, but even that hair is like it's like why did they give him a receding hairline? He doesn't have one. What is this is weird.
There's a lot of oddities in this
Yeah,
movie.
it's
But even
visually odd.
the one where they do the scene where they film them doing their speeches, the crowds are fun. Like I
Mhm,
like the crowd shots, but it is like you just have them standing on a box in a staircase. It
mhm,
just felt very like empty. Like
mhm.
it didn't quite work as a space. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, and it's odd because it seems like Kenneth Branagh has greater limitations with something like Hamlet or Henry V. He
Yeah.
doesn't seem like he had as many resources, especially Hamlet. It's in one room and adjacent rooms to that
Yeah.
room, and yet that feels
But
so
it's
dynamic.
stunning. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like you're moving around all the place, and you know where you are. And you're right. There's just a sort of plainness to it. Like you don't get the sense you're in ancient. You don't get the sense you're in a city. You very
No,
much
you
know you're
don't.
on a
Yeah.
soundstage. Yeah.
Yeah, you very much get the sense that you are on. Yeah, and that's why I think it feels like a staged, like a
Mhm.
filmed staged play. There is no sense that there's other people there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just this group.
And yeah, but it's still you watch it for the performances. They're very good performances.
Yeah. Yeah, Brenda, I think this is the only video recording of any type of Brenda doing Shakespeare.
Hmm. He's
Olivier,
good at it. He
he's
is
good
good.
at it, and I think after this, Olivier invited him, and I think Olivier helped him with this a little bit. Laurence Olivier helped him with this a little bit, and then invited him to do Hamlet in London, and he turned it down because he didn't feel like it. Because Brando's
Yeah, that would have been
work
fun.
ethic was not,
Yeah, he was kind of lazy.
yeah, so it was not
But it would have been
admirable.
like if you could have got them if they were still able to do like Othello together, the two of them doing Othello could have been fun or
Yeah,
something like that.
he would be a great Iago.
Yeah, that's it. The two of them doing something like
Oh,
that would have been fun,
that would have been great. Oh well.
but
Yeah. All right. Any other notes for this play here?
nah,
Yeah.
nah,
Yeah.
nah. Oh, one last thing.
Sure.
I just want to throw out one of the moments I really liked is when the blind soothsayer does his Beware the Ides of March and then is feeling his way out and feels Brutus's face. I love that moment.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
that's a great moment. And then he kind of goes "Ugh." and like backs off and runs off. I'm like, ah, that was good.
Yeah.
It's a good
That was a good
moment.
choice. Yes,
Yes,
I
that was a
agree.
very good directorial decision there.
Yeah. Excellent. If you enjoyed Julius Caesar, check out these adaptations. George Millet's 1907 French short film that if you actually do see it, let us know because apparently it's lost. So
I was going to
sorry about
say,
that.
I would not watch that.
There's also the 1970 Stuart Burge film starring Charlton Heston as Antony and Jason Robards as Brutus with John Gielgud
Ugh,
as Caesar.
wow.
Yes, yeah. So that might be
Why
something
didn't we do that?
because I just found out about it. That's why we should probably have done that one.
Oh man, that would have been fun to have seen.
Yeah. There's also the Karaoke King, which is a 2007 comedy loosely based on Julius Caesar, as well as Caesar Must Die, an Italian film in which some Italian prisoners put on a performance of Julius Caesar, which either sounds awesome or insufferable. Audience, let us know which. You can rate and review this show anywhere fine podcasts are available. For those viewing in YouTube land, if you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the Talking Studios channel for all our exciting content, and follow us on social media at Talking Studios. Check out other shows by Talking Studios, including Talking Pictures Trivia, where we explore movies through trivia, Keep Making Movies, where we explore micro-budget films, Limited Lexicon, where we play through text-based adventure games, and Get the Point, where we slowly reveal a movie poster and try to guess which movie poster it is. Got a question for us? Call the Talking Studios hotline at 201-467-8679 and leave a message. It may be featured on a future episode. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to Adapt It, wherever fine podcasts are found. Join us next time when we discuss Antony and Cleopatra, the play from 1607, as well as the Charlton Heston adaptation from 1972. See you then.
Wow, Talking Studios.
Next week, we'll be discussing Antony and Cleopatra. Pat, if you could play one role in this play, what would it be, or what do you feel you would be cast in?
I'm pretty sure I'd be cast as Lepidus. I'm getting Lepidus here. I got some serious Lepidus vibes.
You're getting some Lepidus vibes.
I'd probably get Lepidus. Even then, I probably it's the role I'd want to play anyway. Like, I, I mean, I get the appeal of Mark Antony, but as a character, it's just like not a role I could play or would want to play. And there's not a lot of great other characters in this thing. So I guess I'd go with Lepidus. What about you?
I think I think I could probably do Antony.
You could
I,
do Antony.
I could do Antony. Yeah, he's
I
not
couldn't
as
do Antony. I just couldn't do it.
yeah, he's not as appealing in this one, even though he has a lot more to do. just because he kind of makes you shake your head a little bit.
He's a
I,
moron. I mean, that's gonna.
yeah, that's the problem. Yeah, he's kind of an idiot at this
He's
point.
if I had that app on my phone, you could do the whoosh. Like he's like the absolute epitome of whip in just the stupidest
Whoosha.
way. Yeah, in the stupidest way.
Yeah. Are you trying to do whipped? Yeah. Whoosha. No, it's
What is that from?
from Friends when they're trying to tease Chandler about being whipped. And
Oh,
they're
I
like,
didn't see
what are
that
you
one.
doing? It's like, whoosha. He's like, that's not whipped. It's
Yeah.
whoosh. Yeah.
So yeah, he's
Mhm.
pretty. He's and just in the stupidest way. Like it's hard to see why. So
Yeah, he's a little infuriating. I think Barbas is a pretty
yeah,
good
that's a fun.
role.
That's a fun. He's got something to do.
Yeah, he's got fun. I have to say, the one thing I liked about the '72 film was Ray's. I think it's Fernando Rey who plays Lepidus. I think
Yeah,
he's the one kind of like shining
he was
spot
fun. I
in
thought
that
that's why
movie.
I'm picking him. He was funny. He was
Yeah,
act I actually that was the only I agree. That was actually probably the only moment that I actually enjoyed was those scenes with Lepidus.
yeah, yeah.
Because
He's good.
watching him like sit in the chair. Oh, we got we'll save it for
We'll
that.
we'll get it. We'll save it for the episode.